We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
We can't let that happen to our country. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule.
No, not yet. Not until me and Harvey get the rules straightened out.
Rules? In a knife fight? No rules. What?
Well, if there ain't gonna be any rules, let's get the fight started. Someone count 1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go.
I was really rooting for you, Butch.
Well, thank you, Flatnose.
I read that Joe Biden is taking foreign policy advice from Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney, of course, more than anyone else, motivated America's military misadventures over the past 20 years. This is not a hugely surprising development. Not much of the mess in America's foreign policy could have been made without Joe Biden. First, as the loudest congressional cheerleader when W was the president, and then as the head cheerleader when Obama was the president. Nevertheless, it struck me that most in the resistance never took the time to interpret what Joe Biden actually meant when he blandly promised a return to normalcy and to restore the soul of the nation. Instead, they willfully ignored the fact that Joe Biden never proposed one single policy except that everyone should wear a mask, as if that's the answer to the COVID issue. They willfully failed to recognize the cynicism in Biden's strategy to offer them only an empty vessel to fill with their hopes and dreams that once the great orange menace was slain, they would frolic in the land of unicorns and rainbows. I mention this not to make fun of them, but because the election is not over, and because their foolishness and methods continue to pose a grave threat to the constitutional order of this republic. Some of them are very fine people, but to a man they seem horribly misinformed. Section 1 of Article 2 of the Constitution provides the manner in which the president is elected. Each state appoints, in the manner decided by its legislature, a number of electors equal to the number of federal senators and congressmen the state has. Section 1 of Title 3 of the United States Code provides that the electors must be appointed on the Tuesday next after the first Monday in November in every fourth year. This is commonly known as Election Day. The legislatures of every state long ago decided that the electors are appointed by popular vote. In fact, for more than a century, the citizens of most states vote directly for the president and not for an elector. After the electors are appointed, they meet to vote for president and vice president. The person in each contest who gets the most votes wins. Section 7 of Title 3 of the United States Code provides that this meeting occurs on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. This year, the meeting date is December 14th. This begs the question, what happens if there is a breakdown in the process? The process can break down in two places. However, neither would be a so-called constitutional crisis because the Constitution provides a clear path through the possible breakdowns. There is no question about the rule of law, which we know is something the Democrats cherish, right?
Repeatedly, they've disregarded American principles of rule of law and voting rights and transparency, basic norms that previous administrations observed regardless of party, principles that are the bedrock of our democracy. So our country's future hangs on this election.
The first place where the presidential election process can break down is with the popular vote. When an election fails, such as when a court invalidates an election for systemic and incurable fraud, Section 2 of Title 3 of the United States Code provides that a state's electors may then be appointed in such a manner as its legislature directs. This means, for example, that even if the popular support in a state favors the Democrat, if that support could be reliably measured, If the state legislature has a Republican majority, the state legislature may and likely will appoint Republican electors. I don't know if Trump's legal challenges will be successful. However, if he proves that one or more state elections have failed because of illegal ballot harvesting, manipulation of the software in the ballot counting machines, the counting of untimely or illegal votes, and the like, the legislatures of the states whose elections have failed would then appoint the electors. This is significant because the state legislatures of all the so-called battleground states are under Republican control: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. Further, these are all states in which material irregularities are alleged to have occurred. The second place where the presidential election process can break down is in the Electoral College. If neither candidate has a majority of the vote, then the Congress decides, with each state having one vote. As with the first possible breakdown of one or more of the state elections, this vote would also almost certainly be along party lines. The current constituency of the Congress is 26 Republican states, 22 Democrat states, and 2 ties. As I mentioned, I can't predict how the legal claims will be resolved. We do, of course, have a direct admission from the boss of the Democrats of a vast and comprehensive fraud operation. This admission makes a compelling prima facie case.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
There's no stuttering. There's no indication of senility. This admission is the careful articulation of a deliberate thought by someone with 50 years of experience in public speaking. However, until we know more about Trump's claims and evidence, a reasonable prediction of the outcome is impossible. I do know that there is a lot of inertia in the system, which is being amplified by the media monopoly, so that the judges can be expected to be biased in favor of the reported election results. As a result, it is likely that Trump will need overwhelming evidence of fundamental unfairness and prejudice to win. Now, I have always thought that the contrivance is dishonest that those who peacefully assemble in support of their rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to possess modern firearms, freedom from arbitrary government action, and so forth, are labeled as extremists, but that those who have been burning, looting, and murdering for the past year are labeled as peaceful protesters. Frankly, it strikes me that the extremists are those who disregard or who would abridge the Constitution. I am fairly confident that if Trump ends up winning this election, the resistance will become violent. That is to say, even more violent. They have a record of chaos and insurrection which cannot be disputed. I am also fairly confident that they will demand that their rights be taken from them so that no future election can be stolen. These inferences cause me some concern, not because the violence itself will ever have any end other than itself, but mostly because the people who pay the politicians would also like to see the Constitution repealed, for economic reasons. I do have an abiding faith in the Constitution's resilience. It has been pulled and pushed this way and that for more than 200 years, and it has survived. This does not make it indestructible. It does require that the people who cherish their liberty to remember never to give up their rights. History shows that if you do, you will never get them back.